Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. For those persons who have your mic on, can you kindly turn it off for us, please? Thank you very much. So we are about to begin today's webinar. So a pleasant good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to NEDCO's third webinar in a series of webinars geared towards assisting you, the entrepreneur, to regenerate, redesign, restructure, and restore your business during this unprecedented time. I am Tamara Springer, Business Development Training Officer at NEDCO, and I will be your moderator for today's session. As we begin today's webinar, I would like to introduce you to our two speakers. Our first speaker for today is Mr. Joseph Morrison, Business Manager for our Tobago's NEDCO branch. Mr. Morrison comes with a wealth of information in the area of finance and entrepreneurship. Mr. Morrison will be followed by Kyle Fortuné, attorney at law and lecturer at the University of the West Indies in the field of business law and commercial law. Before we begin, allow me to provide you with some house rules. The persons who currently have their mic on, we ask you again to please take it off. We will introduce a question and answer segment after our first speaker. We will allow three questions where persons can then take off their mics. By showing a raise of hands, I will call on those persons to verbally ask your questions. Please be reminded that your questions ought to be with regard to the topic, and it must be asked in a respectable manner. At the end of the session, we will also have a question and answer segment, and there is where we invite you during the session to please put your questions in the chat. When our second speaker reaches halfway through his presentation, we will also have another question and answer segment where we'll allow 3 audio questions, and persons will indicate by showing using the raise hand icon to indicate who would like to ask their questions. I will now hand you over to Mr. Morrison, who will take you through the first aspect of this presentation. Mr. Morrison will highlight to the audience the importance of registering a business and some of the challenges that we will encounter at NEDCO when persons come with probably unregistered entities or even entities that are not registered properly within the correct category. Right? Again, the topic for today is the legal aspect of business, and therefore we will delve further into this topic as we invite our first speaker to present to us. Mr. Morrison. Mr. Morrison, are you there?
Yes, good afternoon to everyone. Good afternoon, Tamara.
Good afternoon.
This introduction is waiting on my slides too. Come on. Okay. Is everyone seeing this slide?
Yes, it is visible to us.
Yes, it's visible.
Great. So this afternoon, I want to start with key points of concern. Everyone hearing?
I am hearing you, Joseph.
Right, great. Everyone should be seeing this slide. That is actually NEDCO's location at the Tobago branch, and I'm the business manager for the Tobago location at Glen Road. So we want to look at key points. with regard to business registration. Next slide. There's some moment, we're having some difficulty with this slide. Great. So why register your business? And it's international best practice for businesses to be registered. It helps governments, first of all, and financial institutions gather data and make policy to support business growth. Now, when you register your business, you enjoy certain benefits. You can pass the cash your business proceeds legally through a bank account, which gives you peace of mind. As you know, it is illegal to pass business proceeds through a personal account. That is called commingling. So passing your cash through a bank account gives you access to overdraft facilities for ease of credit, especially for stocking up at peak season. You can also access credit card facilities for ease of online shopping for the business, wire transfer facilities to pay suppliers. You can also use your wire transfer facilities to pay staff. And of course, e-commerce facilities to receive payments from customers online. Now, whilst it helps the government and the financial institutions to gather data and make policy to support business growth, right, it's also important that those governments and financial institutions create institutions that will assist, like NEDCO. So you find that at NEDCO, we offer business advisory services. You can walk into any branch of NEDCO and get free advice on opening your business. And we have even more detailed advisory services where you would engage with a business advisor and they would walk you through the different options that you may want to pursue with regard to. NEDCO also offers low-cost training in different areas, right? Managing your cash, developing an online presence. You know, those are some of the areas that NEDCO offers. NEDCO offers loans as well, right? And one of the easiest places to get through with a loan for your business. And of course, everyone would have heard of the grants that we now offer for COVID relief. Now, just a second. Right, so thank you. So registering your business also helps governments to fight money laundering, right? And it helps to facilitate transparency of your business. Once you deposit all your business revenue into your business account, you can access online statements, and they act as a permanent record of income and expenditure, so it makes your accounting easier. The thing with money laundering is that your business cannot survive against unfair competition. And when I say unfair competition, I mean persons who are fronting legitimate business using illegally earned funds. So that registration really helps establish industry norms. It helps the financial institutions understand what is normal for that sector of the economy, right, for your business. And as such, they can identify persons who are passing illegal funds through the business and giving you an unfair competitive effect. So it really helps establish industry norms, and then from that, the authorities are able to weed out money laundering operations. So both on a personal and a country level, there are several benefits to business registration with regard to going to the registry and developing your business application for registration of your business. Next slide, please. Thank you. Right. So many customers come to us and they haven't registered as yet. So when we say, well, you have to register your business, the first thing they ask is, well, what am I going to name the business? And of course, that's up to you. Do you want to use your personal name for the business, or do you want to create a unique name? And if you create a unique name, what unique benefit do you want to convey? For example, you may want to name your business PD Air Conditioning Services, Reliable Auto Repairs, Economat, as the case may be, right? If you say Speedy Air Conditioning Services, it means you want to convey the benefit that you offer a fast service. You deliver quickly and on time, right? Reliable Auto Repairs, you want to say that your business is reliable. You know, when you come and you get your vehicle fixed at my business, you don't have to come back, for a long time because you've got a reliable repair, right? Economat, the goods are reasonably priced and affordable. So what unique benefit do you really want to convey? Does the name sound good when said out loud, right? Think about the word low good, right? So you're advertising low good, low fat ice cream. That's the name of your product. But when you say it out loud, does it really convey what you want it to convey? Could it be easily misconstrued to sound like no good, low fat ice cream? So you say the name out loud so that you have an idea, how simple it is to pronounce. Could it be misconstrued for another product or another thing that you don't really want, right? That helps when you're choosing a name. Is the name easy to pronounce and spell? For example, Apple, right? So Steve Jobs would have chosen Apple because it's easy to spell, it's easy to pronounce, and it's a fruit many people have eaten and like. Avoid initials. The only thing about initials is that it doesn't really say anything about your product or service, right? And then it could get lost in a clutter of names. You also might want to avoid first names unless it's catchy, right? So traders tend to use their first names for their business if it's, you want the customer to refer to directly. A first name like Joe's Pizza, I think we're familiar with that name, or Harry's Roti Shop. That is easy to remember, and it gives a sense of comfort that you have a good relationship with the owner. So again, unless it's catchy, you try to avoid first names. One of your first considerations would also be your business structure. Now, this is very important and has a lot of legal ramifications, and I want to go into them a little bit. And of course, the next presenter, Mr. Fortune, will go more in depth. So a sole trader is simply where you are the sole owner and operator of the business. You sign on all the legal documents, right, and you own all the assets of the business under that name. The partnership is where you have one or more partners who own the business with you. And then you have the limited liability company where you can retain ownership and the company is run by a board of directors. So you ask yourself the question, if I'm going to have partners come on board with me, are they willing and able to operate the business in my absence, right, due to illness or travel as the case may be? These things will happen. Do they require training? Some skill-intensive services, air conditioning, plumbing, etc. Even hairdressing, nail technicians, all these skill-intensive services require training, some type of passing on of skills. So does your partner who you want to be in that business with you, do they require the training? That's a question you have to answer. Would they then require some sort of compensation? Would they have to take time off from work, or are they willing to be committed full-time into the business, which means they may require some type of compensation? And can you afford to pay them that compensation? Can you trust them to operate the business? And obviously, over the long term, can you trust them to be committed to the business? As you know, persons would go through several stages of life, things like marriage, birth of a child, right? So you want to know if you sign up this person as a partner, whether you go partnership or if they are directors of your company and you have roles for them to perform, you want to know that they will be there for you over the long term of the business. So we want to get a bit more into the legal ramifications. And of course, the next question is, to what extent would they be willing to be in? Would they be willing to be indebted for the sake of the business? And of course, if they are willing to be indebted, are they credit worthy? You know, if your partners or your directors have delinquent loans under their name, it could prevent the business entity from accessing credit. So you will need to ask those questions up front. Are any partners PPs? What do I mean by PPs? Those are politically exposed persons or publicly exposed persons. Now, financial institutions see PPs as high risk. And when I say high risk, those are persons who either they're in political life or hold high office in public life, or they're friends or relatives, you know, in close proximity to that person who holds that office. And what the financial institutions will look at is the possibility of funds being channeled through their name and probably through their account, or with them being a director or a partner in the business, that the business itself, the entity itself, will be used to channel funds that may or may not be corruptly acquired. So having a politically exposed person as a partner may prove to be a constraint for the business. You know, if the business wants to access facilities, a simple thing like opening an account could, you know, be a long, you know, it could take a long time, could cause a lot of ramifications, because that person has to go through a lot of scrutiny before the account could be opened. You also have to ask yourself, what role would this partner really play? You know, and ensure that the person knows exactly what their responsibilities are. Legal representation is another very important part of it, because you have to ask yourself the question, are you willing to have them sign to represent the company, to enter, let's say, into a legally binding agreement, like a contract? Is there an agreed decision-making process? So is it that you would put things to a vote? If you decide, you know, you're making decisions on behalf of the company, would you put it to a vote, or will you retain the final say? How will your share of net profits be calculated? You know, some persons decide that they will wait a couple of years before they start to take out profits from the company, so they reinvest all the profits that are made, and want a direct benefit right away. So they may say, well, okay, we're sharing 50-50 or 10%, 90%, as the case may be, based on what you believe that input should be. But of course, the decision must be made upfront as to what share of profits should be retained. And of course, what are the rules of exit? Because that person may be in the business today, but they want to leave, and they may have already invested significantly into the business. So there must be some mechanism that you establish whereby they either sell their stake in the business, or if they're willing to relinquish it and walk away, you know, but those decisions must take place upfront. So as you can see, there are a lot of considerations that have to take place when you decide on naming your business and registering your business. Further to that, You go to the bank now and you want to open a bank account. As I mentioned before, there are several benefits with regard to opening a bank account. You know, you have the whole gamut of facilities that become available to you once you open the account and you're passing the money regularly through the account. So you have to decide now who will sign and up to what amount. Or let's say on withdrawals. Let's say you're a parent and you have kids and you want them to be in the business as directors or partners. You may decide that, okay, I will sign on amounts over a particular amount, let's say over 10,000, and the kids, maybe any the kids can sign on amounts under 10,000. You know, those are the kind of decisions you have to make when you open a savings account. Who will sign and up to what amount? When we talk about loans now, there are some things you need to know, because that business liability that your directors or your partners sign on will limit how much they can apply for personally. Also limit you how much you can apply for personally, because most likely the lending institution will ask you for a personal guarantee. So that means if you do a credit bureau search thereafter, taking out the liability, your name will show up for the amount. Right? Your partner or director's name will show up for the amount as having signed. And that could limit, let's say they wanted to take out a car for themselves thereafter, you know, it will affect their ability to get credit. Also, if the payments are late, right, or the payments to the business are paid late, then it would affect your personal credit rating. So those are things you have to be mindful of. For the partnership, if a partner dies, and speaking to right of successorship, you know, the ownership could pass on to the inheritors. So you have to also take that into account. So these were just some of the things that I wanted to bring to your attention. When you're opening a business and when you're registering the business, these are some of the concerns. So I want to stop here. And of course, if there are any questions, I will seek to answer to the best of my ability. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison, for that insightful presentation. We do have some hands raised with questions from the audience. So I will allow Alicia Medina to open her mic and ask a question. Alicia.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
I do have a limited liability company, and I just wanted some advice on, like, if I have sub companies under it in the future, like how that would play out, how that would be done legally, I guess. For example, like how ANSA has like ANSA Motors, ANSA Beverages, all of that, like how would that play out under an LLC?
Great. So I think this is an area Mr. Fortuné would handle later on, but I'll take a dab at it because I have some experience with it. So on your listing of shareholders, right, because with your limited liability company, you will do a listing of shareholders with your annual return. And therefore, each company that is registered as a shareholder on your annual return could be listed with the percentage shareholding. And well, financial institutions normally do a sort of a tree structure. So they will now delve into who are the ultimate beneficial owners of each of those companies. So there's nothing wrong with having another company represented in the list of shareholders, right? And then you have your breakdown totaling up to 100%. And each company that is now listed may have directors, you know, listed separately. But you'll have the directors for your company that you're operating, right? But the persons who represent companies can be listed, the companies themselves will be listed as shareholders. That's how it's generally done. So it doesn't present any sort of problem or so in terms of registration. Hope that answers your question.
So only on the annual return, I would put the sub company as a shareholder, a certain percentage shareholder. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You would have filed a notice of shareholders, so it will be represented there as well. So you can start your company having that in place, right? And then when you do your annual return, you will notice it. You will note it on the notice of shareholders.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison, for that answer to Alyssa's question. We will now take a question from Perry. Perry, you can unmute your mic and ask your question, please.
Hi, good afternoon. I have two questions. The first one is with respect to persons signing. So I have a limited liability company, that's Counseling Matters Limited, and I wanted to get a sense of when it is determined who will sign and up to what amount. How should this be officially documented within the organization? Does it need to be officially documented? So that's one. If it needs to be officially documented, and how? And the second question is, I am Counseling Matters Limited, we provide counseling services and dyslexia therapy, and I am the solo practitioner for those services. So currently I pay myself as a service provider. So I wanted to know if that is recommended, that arrangement for payment as a service provider. So those are my two questions. Thank you.
Okay. Could you repeat the second question in terms of, or I should say, elucidate on the second question? But I'm gathering that you're wondering if that arrangement where you are the provider of the service, but you have other directors, if that's okay for the operation.
Yes, so we have two directors. So I'm the co-director of Counseling Matters Limited. So it's myself and another person. And in terms of the clinical services, I'm the only person that provides those clinical services at the moment. And so I wanted to know what is really the correct arrangement to be able to pay myself for the clinical services that I provide. So currently I use a service provider arrangement. And so I wanted to know if that is the best arrangement and if there are any other recommendations.
Yes, there's no problem with you deriving an emolument which should be reflected in an agreement between the two parties. Right? So, and you will have your minutes of your meeting, which should reflect that you're paid a fixed emolument, or even if it's variable, but within the confines of that agreement, you should have documentation to confirm what your emolument arrangement is. So what I would ask you though is, what is the other person, is the other director being compensated?
At this point in time, no.
And but is that okay? Are they okay with just being a silent director, not being compensated, or?
At this point in time, yes. And just in terms of documentation, there's a service provider contract.
Okay. Right. So I would say that once you have it documented, it should not be an issue. Are you the majority shareholder, or the owner of the company? De facto owner of the company?
So the co-director to the company is my dad, right? And so so there's no issue at this point in time where payment or non-payment is concerned, right? Okay. But for future, So you're saying that the service provider is correct, and so I know I'm slipping in another question. I hope that's okay. For future, how is it recommended that board of directors should be paid, should be compensated?
Right. So
So
that is
one
determined by
sec,
your.
excuse, Harry, is it possible we can ask you to put that question in the chat, and we will take it at the end so we can let
Sure,
someone
no
else
problem. I'll put it in the
type
chat.
their question
Thank
in.
you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
And the first question as well.
We now will ask one last question. Take one last question from Mr. Handel Savory.
Hi, good day, everyone. Can you hear me?
Good day.
Right.
Yes.
So, based on all the stuff you said about, basically, I believe you're referring to like the company bylaws, like who could sign if there's voting, accessing the company accounts, which I'm aware of, but I'm concerned about the tangible, actual, physical implementation of that. In terms of guidance, and I don't know if NEDCO provides help with that, in terms of actually sitting and creating these company bylaws so it is understood and actually being guided to actually doing it properly. Because I have an LLC, I have one director, and that's as far as I am in terms of actually operating as an LLC. Those bylaws and stuff are not in place, so I'm aware of what I have to do. I'm just not sure if there needs to be like a lawyer present or stuff like that. So if NEDCO could actually provide sitting with owners and actually do that, I think that would be really helpful.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Come on.
Thank you, Handel, for that comment. And you were not coming across clearly, so you can also place the first aspect of your comment question in the chat as well. You're coming off really distorted.
I heard I didn't hear him say that he wanted to know if NEDCO provided guidance. And the answer to that is yes. You can have guidance for your bylaws. Even at the branch level, most of the branch managers at the branch level can give you some guidance on creating your bylaws. In terms of the hand-holding to actually craft the bylaws, you may want to get legal services involved. There are also templates online for company bylaws. But in terms of what you want to get out of the bylaws, you can get guidance from NEDCO, and even to the extent of our advisory services getting formally in.
Thank you, Handel, for your question, and thank you, Mr. Morrison, for answering. We now go to the second presenter, Mr. Kyle Fortuné, who will take us through how to register a business using the online system, the types of business to register, the pros and cons of registering each type of business. Secondly, he will go into taxation, outlining the different types of taxes and when and how and why entrepreneurs should do their taxes. So I invite Mr. Fortuné to the mic to do his presentation. Mr. Fortuné, your mic is off. Mr. Fortuné, your mic is off. You're muted. Mr. Fortuné. Hello.
There are some questions on the chat. You all could ask the questions on the chat. Morrison, anything at Mr. Morrison? Can you look at some of the questions in the chat and see if you get responses?
Okay, just a sec. Show conversation. Yeah. Right. Let's see. All right. Is it possible to switch from unlimited to an LLC or vice versa? That one I would have to leave for Mr. Fortunate because that may have some legal ramifications. Does NEDCO assist in completing business plans? Oh yes. Right, without the client requesting a loan, definitely. And again, we will provide guidance because at the end of the day, we want to have a discussion with you about developing your business. And so it's not just, you come and say, well, I want a business plan, and you do it up and then you take it and go. It's about you being educated as to how to develop a business plan, what are the key things that you look at. So at the end of the day, you can do it on your own or with the assistance of someone once you know exactly what you want out of the business plan and what are the key factors. That was from Alana Taylor. Another question is, when it is determined who are the financial signatories for an LLC and how much each person can sign for, how should this be documented for company records? Right, this has to be documented in the minutes of the meetings of the directors. And what you do is you have persons sign to agree. Now, this could be supplemented by the bank records, because if you see bank, if you have documents or financial institution, the financial institution would have documents that you would sign outlining what are the limits of each person. Therefore, you can have copies of that on your records. All right, so I trust that answers the question. This person asked if this meeting is being recorded and having some difficulty. Yes, the meeting is being recorded.
Mr. Morrison, can you hear me now?
Okay, yes.
Yes, we can hear you, Kai.
Okay, so I'll stop for now.
Yes, I don't know what happened there, some technical difficulties. So let me see if I can share my presentation. Can you see the presentation?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kyle Fortuny, attorney at law, and welcome to this segment of the third webinar from the National Entrepreneurship Development Company on the legal aspects of business. I will be going through with you all this afternoon business registration, although from the looks of it, a lot of you all already registered, but I will go through with you all how to register your business in these current times, the name reservation process, the new online system, the different types of business manifestations available to persons who wish to register the business, and considerations in relation to each type of business, whether it be sole trader, partnership, or limited liability company. And then finally, we'll take a look at taxation. So why register your business? Whether it is a sole trader, partnership, or limited liability company, it is very important because it imports a sense of legitimacy for your business, and it also provides much welcome structure to various business manifestations. And we'll get into what exactly that means as we progress through this presentation. As many of you all would probably know, the company's registry is a subdivision of the Ministry of the Attorney General and Legal Affairs, and they have locations all over Trinidad and Tobago. In Arima, they are located upstairs the Pennywise building on Devonish Street. In Port of Spain, they are located Government Campus Plaza on the corner of London and Richmond Street. City of San Fernando. They're located at number 9 Leotown Street. And in Tobago, as Mr. Morrison would have said, they're at number 11 Hamilton Street, Scarborough. So turning now to take a look at sole traders. So small one-person businesses may choose this model. Currently, as of the 1st of August, the Attorney General and Legal Affairs, the Companies Registry, stopped and embarked upon this new online name reservation system on ttbizlink.gov.tt. And again, we'll go into a little more detail concerning that. So the procedure now for anyone wanting to register a sole trader business is to first do an application for a name reservation using a TT BizLink account. So you have to register with TT Connect and then get a TT BizLink ID, which we'll go into in a little more detail shortly, and make your name reservation. After the name is approved, you fill out the business details on the online portal and upload a copy of the sole trader's valid identification. And the information that is uploaded on this portal is basically the same information that would have been filled out in the forms, the Form 25s, and so on previously. So the e-portal actually fills out the information in those forms, and when everything is finished, they would email the applicants and you would sign it and you would take it in for approval. So some pros and cons in relation to registering a business as a sole trader. So registering a sole trader is somewhat easier than registering a company, for example. There are less continuing obligations than other business models. For example, for companies, there's a requirement to file annual returns within 1 month of the anniversary of incorporation of that company each and every year. Sole traders tend to have it easier to obtain a bank account, and we'll see the relation to that when we look at the companies just now. On the flip side, the cons in relation to registering a business as a sole trader, firstly, is that sole traders have full liability for all the debts of the business. So if someone is injured, or if financial loss of whatever kind is caused to somebody due to the operation of that business, the sole trader will be fully liable. Secondly, it is more difficult to raise capital for the business, to raise money for the business, when compared with partnerships and companies. Turning now to partnerships, and most of you may know that the word firm is synonymous with partnerships, or firm is a partnership. Similar to sole traders, as of August the 1st, now you need to do your name reservations online using the TT BizLink portal. After you get your name approved, similarly, you fill out the information on the online portal as well. You have to upload copies of the valid identification of each one of the partners. And again, either a registrar or legal officer will check the documentation, will check the information that is put on the online portal, and they will approve or reject it. Generally speaking, it is a good idea to have a partnership agreement prepared by an attorney, setting out the rights and obligations of each of the partners. The partnership agreement may also govern the way in which the partnership is run. So Mr. Morrison in his presentation would have spoken about how to deal with profits, considerations of the rules of exits if someone dies, consideration about the roles and responsibilities of the individuals involved in the business. So if that business is a partnership, this partnership agreement will be where all these things are set out. Benefits to registering a business as a partnership would include the fact that it is easier to register than a company, less information is required, and so on. They have less continuing obligations than a limited liability company, similar to the sole trader in that there are no annual returns and so on to file for partnerships. Again, it's easier to obtain a bank account than a company because of the requirements of most banks that they have certain clauses included in your bylaws before they allow you to open a bank account with them. A partnership is easier to raise capital than a sole trader because partners could pool resources together. They could also obtain loans if one or more partners agree to stand as a guarantor or surety for the loan. On the flip side, the cons of a partnership is very important. Partners are jointly and personally fully liable for the debts of the business, as well as if injury is caused or financial loss is caused, similar to what we saw with sole traders. Decision making. Now, what that means, that first point, what that means is that if the business is owing money for whatever reason, the person to whom the business owes money can go after the partnership as a whole and can also go after each and every partner individually for the entire amount owed. Secondly, decision making is more complicated than a sole trader, as different people have different opinions and so on as to how and what to do in any given situation. Everybody thinks that they're right. Turning out to companies, limited liability companies. So the big thing about companies is that they have limited liability for the debts of the company. So again, if injury or financial loss is caused to someone due to the operation of the business, directors and shareholders cannot be personally held liable for the damage caused. Secondly, it's easier to raise capital for the business through the issuing and selling of shares as well as debentures. It is therefore the best model in terms of a vehicle for investment. There's also a greater appearance of legitimacy in the mind of the average person when you know that, okay, this person is true, this is a company, this is a registered legal company. There's a greater sense of legitimacy and validity. Fourthly, it offers the most flexibility and structure, which is suited to expansion of business generally or reduction of the business in terms of employees, departments, specializations, and so on. Looking at the cons of a business, it is harder to register than other business models. That is, there's more information to be put in, more information required. Secondly, there are more obligations than other business models. As I mentioned before, the annual returns, which are required to be filed every year, and also notification of any changes to the business that may occur, like the address or that sort of thing. The big one is the potential penalties if deadlines for filing annual returns and filing notices are not filed in time. And as I mentioned earlier, it's harder to obtain a bank account because many banks require that bylaws be registered covering the operation of the bank account, as well as how the signatures are going to operate, who is going to be able to sign. And all directors must agree and sign off on those documents. So it is the limitation of liability and its ability to raise money that makes the company attractive to most people, or many people. So whether it's entering into contracts for the sale or purchase of items, or contracts for the provision of some type of personal service, company directors or shareholders can rest assured that if something were to go wrong, the company would only be liable to the extent of the value of the assets of the company. So somebody who wants to sue the company in court cannot sue a director or shareholder in their personal capacity and come after their personal assets if they suffer loss due to the actions or inaction of the company. In contrast, if a customer or client or person or company suffers loss due to the actions or inaction of a sole trader or a partnership, if they are found liable in court, the court can come after the personal assets of the sole trader or individual partners in a partnership in order to satisfy that debt. So as mentioned before, the name reservation application needs to be submitted regardless of what type of business you're trying to register. After the name is approved, it must be registered within 45 days from the date of decision. That used to be 20 days, but it was changed recently with this new regulations that came in terms of the COVID and so on. So it must be registered within 45 days from the date of the decision. So that is the relevant sections on the TT Connect and TT BizLink web portal must be filled out, and the relevant fees must be paid either by opening a subscription account where you go to the Attorney General and Legal Affairs and you pay a minimum of $500 to open a subscription account, and any subsequent payments that is to be made, the money will be deducted from that account. Or you can make an appointment to go to one of the offices and go to the cashier to pay. And very recently, they began taking credit cards for some of these transactions. I just wanted to know that, strangely enough, in the process of registering the companies, copies of the valid identifications of the proposed directors do not need to be presented, as is the requirement for the sole traders and the partnerships. Some other forms that may be filed before August 1st, 2020, the following forms were required to be filed after you got your name approval. Now, as I indicated earlier, all of this information is uploaded directly to the TT BizLink e-portal. So the notice of directors on the Form 8, notice of address on Form 4, Form 1 articles of incorporation, these were all required to be filed at this stage. However, now everything is done online. Going forward though, if there are any changes to the directors or the address or the articles of incorporation, then these forms would still need to be filled out and you have to make an appointment to file it and so on. If there are any changes of address of the company registry must be notified. That is, the form that's identified just now must be filed within 15 days of the change. If there are any changes of directors of the company, the registry must be notified within 30 days. And similarly, if the secretary changes, you must file the necessary notice of change or notice of addition of secretary within 30 days. Once this time expires, penalties begin to accrue at a rate of $300 per month. So after this process is completed, upon registration, the owners of the company are given a certificate of incorporation, while sole traders and firms are given a document called their business registration certificate. And note well that these certificates are not to be laminated, otherwise they would be rendered invalid. So sole traders and partnerships can be converted to companies if your business grows and expands and it is a feasible and necessary thing to do. If it's a sole trader, a Form 6 needs to be filed if there are changes of business, changes of owners and so on, changes of names. For firms, if changes are made, a Form 7 would need to be filed. And if a person wishes to close their sole trader or their partnership, a Form 9 would need to be filed. And all these forms are located on the ministry's website. So there's now the electronic service, which allows persons to electronically conduct the name searches, the name reservations, and so on, and the registration of business and incorporation of companies. As we would have seen, these services are offered by the Registrar General's Department, and this service is targeted at individuals who are applying for name reservations, registration of businesses, and incorporation of companies. So to access this system, an applicant must first obtain a TT Connect identification number and sign up on TT BizLink for the relevant e-service that he or she wishes to use, such as the company registration e-service. The applicants would then also apply for the TT BizLink ID. The applicant would then complete and submit the online application via the websites www.ttbizlink.gov.tt. Upon submission, the applicant will receive a confirmation notice detailing the fee that must be paid. This payment can be made either at the RG's department using a subscription account if the applicant has one. If a subscription account is being used, the deduction will be an automatic one once the relevant information for the deduction has been entered on the electronic application form in the relevant field. After the name reservation is submitted, the electronic database will search for similar names, similar sounding names, or partial online matches. If the proposed name meets the criteria set out by the Registrar General, it will be approved. And the applicant will then be informed via email whether the name has been approved or whether it is undesirable. Once approved, the name will be reserved for a period of 45 days. If registration is not completed by the 45th day, the name reservation will expire and the process will have to be undertaken again. That is, you'll have to file a new name reservation application. Again, this used to be 20 days, not too long ago. So once payment is made, the name is registered with the Registrar General's Department and lodged in its database. Once all the documents are in order, the applicant is directed to make payment for the application. The applicant pays the relevant fee either at the cashier or via a subscription account if he or she has one. If a subscription account is being used, the deduction will be an automatic one. The company registry will then print the relevant certificate, and once approved, the applicant would print and sign all relevant documents as indicated in the email notification that would have been sent to the applicant. The applicant would then present all signed documents to the Ministry of Legal Affairs, Attorney General and Legal Affairs Documents Verification Counter to collect the relevant certificates from the company's registry. So before I move on to the issue of taxation, just really quickly on the questions which were raised after Mr. Morrison gave his presentation. In relation to the question on the companies having sub-companies and so on, that you would have to do something called a share issue. So you need to file Form 46, and it's also wise to govern how the company is going to own the other companies and how the management of those companies would be done in the bylaws which are attached to the articles of incorporation of that company. In relation to the second question about how is signing officially documented, if it's a partnership, that would be set out in the partnership agreement, as I mentioned earlier. If it's a company, that would be set out in the bylaws attached to the articles of incorporation. There was a question about the two directors and the director paying herself. And as Mr. Morrison would have said, there's no problem with that. I would advise, however, to if a share issue has not been done, do a share issue. As Mr. Morrison said, make sure you have the meetings for the minutes, approving the payments and so on, and possibly even cover yourself by including the considerations of payment and the amount and so on in your bylaws, just out of an abundance of caution. In relation, well, to the last question about the bylaws and so on, well, Mr. Morrison said that NEDCO would in fact give assistance in that regard. Usually persons would go to attorneys as well to help them draft those bylaws. You can get some guidance online, however, there are certain laws that would not be applicable and so on. So you need to tread carefully when using precedents that you find online. I believe the person also said that there was one director of the company, which is strange because I know there's a requirement in Trinidad that the minimum number of directors are 2. But anyway, so that's it for this part of the presentation. I believe we will have some questions before I go into the company tax.
Okay, Mr. Fortuny, there's a lot of questions in the chat. So at this point in time, you can go into the taxation aspect, and then we will go into the question and answer segment with regard to the questions that are posted in the chat.
Sure. So, company tax in Trinidad and Tobago. So it is important to note that petroleum companies involved in production and refining operations in TNT operate under a separate tax regime from other companies. But I would focus on non-petroleum related companies. So companies carrying on a trade or business in Trinidad and Tobago will be subject to charges of corporation tax and or business levy pursuant to the Corporation Tax Act. Corporation tax is charged at the rate of 25% on the first $1 million of a company's chargeable profits and chargeable short-term capital gains, and 30% of everything thereafter. Business levy, on the other hand, is charged on companies making over $360,000 per year in gross sales and receipts, minus exempt income at a rate of 0.6%, but only after 3 years has passed, only after the first 36 months of registration. And the companies would have to pay the higher of the two, so they don't have to pay both. So it's either the corporation tax or the business levy, whichever one is the higher. There's also something called the Green Fund Levy, which is charged at a rate of 0.3% of the company's gross income, which is all the income received in the ordinary course of the business before allowing any deductions for business expenses. And this applies even if the business is exempt from the business levy because it's within the 3 years or it is less than it makes less than 360,000. Green Fund Levy cannot be credited against the corporation tax or business levy and is so regarded as an additional tax. So value-added tax, what we colloquially refer to as VAT, is imposed at the rate right now at 12.5% on the value of certain imported goods and on the value of certain goods and services supplied in TNT, where a supplier will be supplying goods and services to a value over $500,000 a year. Such supplier is required to register as a VAT trader for the purposes of the VAT Act. VAT-registered businesses can deduct VAT that they pay when purchasing goods and services for the business from the VAT that they collect from customers. If the amount of VAT that a business pays is more than they collect, the VAT-registered business can, subject to meeting certain requirements, claim the excess in their VAT returns as a refund. Certain goods and services are exempt from VAT and others are zero rated. That is, VAT is chargeable at a rate of 0%. Customs duties are charged at varying rates on things that are imported into the country according to something known as the Common External Tariff, which is contained in a schedule to the back of the Customs Act. The value of the assessment of these duties are normally the cost, insurance, and freight value of the goods at the time of import. Stamp duty is a tax which is levied pursuant to the Stamp Duty Act at varying rates on instruments and documents of varying types, including deeds of conveyance, mortgages, assignments, debentures, leases, insurance policies, and so on. PAYE, pay as you earn, national insurance and health surcharge. Employers are required to withhold income tax, health surcharge, and national insurance contributions from salaries paid to employees and to remit them to the Board of Inland Revenue and the National Insurance Board. And finally, other miscellaneous taxes include financial services tax, hotel accommodation tax, online purchase tax, and insurance premium tax. Depending on what type of business you operate in, all of these may be relevant at some time or the other. So, what are the questions?
Thank you, Mr. Fortuné, for that informative presentation on business registration and paying your tax, or what we call knowing your tax and taxation. As we go into the question and answer segment, someone was asking about our business advisory services with regards to someone helping you do a business plan or plan for your business. Please, you can call 821-5800. I will place it in the chat as well, extension 2064, to make an appointment. That was one of the questions. And I will put the first question to Mr. Morrison. Do you think financial assistance is available to persons who have been affected by bad credit that was due to a vehicular voluntary surrender? Mr. Morrison?
Yes, financial services can be available, but again, there may be other factors to take into account. When making a credit decision, you not only look at an instance where there may have been late payments resulting from an eventuality, but we also look at collateral, we look at what may have happened before, if there was a history of good payments before the eventuality, and it was able to be rectified, it was rectified thereafter, right? Of course, if the portion of late payments will still show up on the reporting, but if it was eventually cleared off or rectified, that would also be taken into account. So it's not just one or two factors that will be taken into consideration when making the credit decision.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Morrison. To you, Kyle, a lot of persons are asking what is the difference between a limited liability and an LLC, if there is one.
In Trinidad, there's no difference. No, there's no difference. LLC stands for Limited Liability Company.
Okay, thank you. We have another question for you, Kyle. Is it possible to establish a partnership business with a child? Meaning I will be handling the day-to-day operations until the said partner is of age to handle their part of the business. Or would all business partners need to be of legal age?
All business partners would have to be of legal age. There are mechanisms in law that would allow, let's say, the transferring of a business or the selling of a business. If you have a business as a going concern and it's your business and you would like to give that business to a child or so on, there is a process in something called trust law where you can give the business to someone on trust to hold for the child, to basically run for the child until the child reaches the age of majority. That's something else. All business partners must be the age of majority.
Thank you. Someone also wants to know what is the process to appoint a secretary to a LLC?
So I would have gone through on one of the slides, I believe it's a form 27, a notice of secretary, a notice of change of secretary. So in this current COVID season, you would need to make an appointment on the website, www.agla.gov.tt, and to file the relevant documents. So you could download the forms from the website and fill out the forms. Yeah, the secretary is a form 27. So you can get that on the ministry's website, you fill it out, and make an appointment to have it filed.
Okay, thank you. Someone is asking, and I will take that one, if we can actually teach them how to complete the forms here. And I will invite you to look at our social media pages where you would see our New Year Taxes training program being advertised. You can register for that program, or you can call 821-5800 extension 2212 and speak to us further about registering for the New Year Taxes training. And there you will definitely learn how to fill out those forms and complete those forms for yourself. So we go further into our questions, and someone is asking, what is a share issue?
So a share issue, that is what I refer to in form 46. It is just the issuing of shares. So when a company is formed, the directors have authority under the law, under the Companies Act, to issue shares. So the issuing of these shares, so usually you would get legal advice on this, but the issuing of shares is calculated in a number of different ways. One way is that they value the assets of the company. If the company has a vehicle, the company has $10,000 in stock, they may do some sort of valuation, or they may go to professional valuators to get a valuation of the company, including the goodwill of the company, etc. And they may work out the value of the shares based upon that. Also, another thing that people would do, sometimes they just issue nominal shares. So they just have nominal shares based on $1. There are 3 directors in the company, 3 owners, everything. Basically, the whole company is 3 persons, so they issue 3 shares at $1 each. And so there are different ways of going about it. But to answer the question, a share issue is just the statutory issuing, the statutory establishment and recording of shares in the company, which would then allow you to do a lot of different things, well, everything else. In terms of special resolutions, any major decision that a company must make really ought to have a resolution done by the members of the company, the members being the shareholders. For a long time in Trinidad, companies have been operating with no shares whatsoever. Special resolutions have been filed and so on without there even having any shares ever being issued. However, that has changed, and recently, any changes to the articles whatsoever, like including bylaws and so on, now the registry is not allowing it unless you first do your share issue as you're supposed to and indicates who are the shareholders or who is the shareholder of the company. It's a very important consideration.
Thank you very much, Kyle. We have another question. How can you change a business from being registered from sole trader to limited liability? So apparently they are registered as a sole trader and they would like to change that type of registration.
Yes. So sole traders can be changed. So if they are using the same name, then there's a form 6 that you can find on the ministry's website. And on that form 6, there's a standard statutory form that you fill out and you file. Sometimes they may issue a query and they may ask you to file a new name search, but the process is to file the form 6.
Okay, thanks. And there's also a link posted in the chat that will take you to all those forms. So persons who are interested in downloading those forms, you can check in the chat and download the relevant forms that you need. Someone asks, how does tax work for new small business registered? How does tax work for new small business registered? I'm not
Well, as I would have indicated before, corporation tax and business levy, you only have to really worry if the business is making more than $360,000 per year. And also, that is only after the first 36 months from the date of registration. So if the company is registered today, you don't have to pay business levy for the next 3 years. And in terms of, and then only if you make over $360,000. Or if the company is making a lot of money, then corporation tax at the rate of 25% on the first million will be charged. At that point, I mean, if your company making that kind of money, it would be advisable to get some professional accounting advice. I think you'll be able to afford an accountant or an attorney to help you with that kind of thing.
Another question is the declaration of ownership filed every year.
I guess they're referring to the annual return.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the annual return must be filed within 1 month from the date of the anniversary of incorporation. So if you incorporate a company today on the 13th of October, then next year, 30 days from now, so 30 days from now next year, so sometime in November, would be the deadline. And thereafter is always with the date of incorporation, you have 30 days within which to file the annual return. If you don't do that, then $300 per month, you have to pay those penalties. And they add up every month.
Okay. Kyle, another question for you. Can you register multiple companies at one time with the same TT Connect ID?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Morrison, I have a question for you. Someone wants to know if NEDCO will be able to assist persons to register their business and provide guidance.
Oh yes, we would provide guidance as we would have discussed. We look at the name, we look at the business structure that you want to use, and of course, we will know where you go, where you have to go. If there is need for professional help in terms of taxation, crafting of bylaws, we would refer you to the relevant people. But in terms of what you want to get out of the process, right, what your main goals and ambitions are, we will represent that in terms of a discussion with you and give you the correct guidance.
Okay, thank you. To everyone, in the interest of time, we will look at one last question. But please know that the recording will be sent to all the persons that logged on to today's webinar. So I have our last question to Mr. Fortuny. What are the requirements for filing for a BIR number? The person has a registered LLC, no employees, 2 directors. One of the director is a service provider for the company. Would you like me to repeat?
Yes, thanks.
What are the requirements for filing for a BIR number? I have a registered LLC, no employees, 2 directors. One of the directors is a service provider for the company.
So is that filing for a BAR number for the company?
For the company.
As far as I'm aware, filing for the BIR for the company, you have to get the BIR numbers. Now, all the directors and shareholders, they have to have the BIR number. So if there are any shareholders and directors without the BIR number, they have to get it as well. And you take all that information to the Ministry of Finance. I believe now you have to go opposite Hyatt there, Government Campus Plaza, but from Ryston Roadside, you have to go there. And there's an information booth when you enter there. So you go there and they will direct you from there. But it's a simple process. You have to work with all the company registration documents and so on. The company registration documents, the IDs of the directors, perhaps the shareholders as well, but I know the directors for sure. IDs, and company registration documents.
Okay.
I'm not in this COVID-19 now. I must say things are rapidly changing. So what may hold now may change tomorrow. So and they're trying to kind of bring a lot of these things online and on stream. But I know that was the case up to a few weeks ago.
In Tobago, you go to the Victor Bruce building at the Market Square in Scarborough.
Okay, so for persons who are asking if they will be able to get the presentation, as I said before, the recording will be available to you where you can look at it at your own timing and go through the information bit by bit. We want to thank all of you for coming out to our webinar today. Please stay tuned to NEDCO's social media pages where you will be able to get notification and see all our upcoming training, activities, and events that are happening in this time. So thank you all again, and do enjoy your afternoon.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
For the information.
You're
They
welcome.
finish.
What do I need? What you? We could just leave it that way. Sit down already. Tina, I think all the juices and moving at the red juice. Oh, you gonna wash your hand? Don't hand my hand. Just now. Oh, yeah.
Okay, good afternoon, guys.
Afternoon.